Hello again. When abortion was legalised in Britain back in the 1960s, about the same time that sodomy was also made legal, it seemed like a tremendously forward-thinking and progressive measure. Up to that time, abortions had been illegal under any circumstances, and sometimes girls who had become pregnant and wished to avoid scandal and shame resorted to the so-called backstreet abortionists. These people used knitting needles and bicycle pumps with basins of soapy water to bring about abortions. It was a horrible business, and so to end such practices, the law was changed and abortion was allowed in exceptional circumstances if the life of the mother would be at risk or if her physical or mental health would be seriously harmed by continuing with the pregnancy. It was only ever envisaged that abortions would be carried out under special and highly restricted circumstances. A little over 50 years later, what do we find? In the description to this video, I give a link to the official government statistics, from which we may see that in England and Wales in 2020, no fewer than 209,917 abortions were performed, which is roughly 550 a day. From being an exceptional procedure to save a mother's life or prevent her health suffering, abortion has become a run-of-the-mill event of no more significance than having a flu jab or some other minor procedure. Some women simply use it as their preferred method of birth control. Indeed, it's even easier than having a flu jab now, because one doesn't even need to see a doctor at all to have an abortion. During the COVID crisis in spring of 2020, it became possible to be sent the pills which would procure an abortion by post without even seeing a doctor. This scheme is now to be made permanent. Just to make that clear, you can be 3 or 4 months pregnant and take a pill and it will in effect cause a miscarriage. You don't need to see a doctor for that now. Just speak to someone on the phone, get the pills and away you go. The ease with which abortions can now take place is part of a program of eugenics, which is to say disposing of imperfect babies in order to create a more genetically perfect human race. More than 700 babies a year are aborted, which can legally be done up to the 6th month of pregnancy, just because they are suspected to have Down syndrome. That works out roughly one baby being aborted every 12 hours in Britain for this reason. Even fairly trifling physical imperfections are now seen as good grounds for abortions. Between 1996 and 2004, for instance, 20 babies were aborted because they were found during scans to have a club foot, which is something easily corrected by surgery. Even more shocking, 4 babies were aborted during that time because they had either an extra finger or some of their fingers were connected together by a web of skin, something which can be dealt with by minor surgery. In short, any baby who is not physically perfect can be killed before birth. I also give a link in the description to this video to this matter as well, figures for this. I remember that during the Black Lives disturbances in 2020, University College London renamed the Galton Lecture Theatre because Francis Galton, after whom it was named, was an advocate of eugenics. I give a link to a piece about this from UCL's website. It says, "Signs on the Galton Lecture Theatre, Pearson Building and Pearson Lecture Theatre will be taken down with immediate effect. Other changes to the names on maps and signposts around the UCL estate will take place as soon as is practicable. Victorian scientist Francis Galton coined the term eugenics and endowed UCL with his personal collection and archives, along with a bequest for the country's first professorial chair of genetics. The move is one step in a range of actions aimed at acknowledging and addressing the university's historical links with the eugenics movement. It follows a series of recommendations made by the members of the Inquiry into the History of Eugenics at UCL, which reported earlier this year. I find this absolutely fascinating. While those idiots are renaming parts of a university because the names are connected with a Victorian scientist who approved of eugenics, babies are actually being killed in this country because they have an extra finger. In other words, we are practicing eugenics in the most awful way imaginable, but reminding ourselves about genetics is quite unacceptable by having the name of the man who coined the term eugenics showing anywhere in the university where he worked. Has anybody ever heard such a breathtaking example of hypocrisy and nonsense in their life?